so exciting for our commercial producers whom we serve that they're in a marketplace that's expanding and there's a vast appetite for more pork. And we're the people who provide this unique and leading genetic breeding stock to them to start that whole cycle. It's exciting to be in a growing global business, and we're step one in the chain.
Coming up next, we'll have Dr. Steve Turlow. Steve is a reproductive physiologist with DNA Genetics. His main focus and responsibility is focusing on quality assurance for all of the DNA genetic gene transfer centers. He also works technical support for a lot of producers. Steve has had a career where he's even been a sow farm manager with an emphasis on reproduction, be it post-cervical AI as well as commercial embryo transfer. And so as I pull up his presentation, we'd like to certainly welcome Steve to our session.
Good. Thanks, Mark. Okay. So thanks, Mark, for that kind introduction, and thanks for all of you who are attending today. So first of all, it was sad news to hear of Dr. George Foxcroft's passing. George has had a profound influence on my career and many of the things I'll talk about today as well. So yeah, in memory of his passing. So today we'll talk a little bit about managing the tools for managing and manipulating the estrus cycle and breeding in sows. So we'll talk briefly about PG600, Altrinagest. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about the combination of those two and how to use those effectively. We'll spend a little time with Avigel and single fixed time insemination. And we'll finish up with the fact that the boar is still the best tool that we really have in our production systems. The purpose today is not to do an in-depth literature review or deep dive into the data to help us understand if these products work or if you should use them. These products work and they work well. What I'd like to do today is talk a little bit about them so we can build a better understanding of these tools so we know better how to use them and apply them appropriately to achieve their value and intended purpose in our production systems today. So how and where do these different products apply or impact the estrus cycle in a pig? So PG6, oops, got the wrong. Sorry, I think I went backwards. There we go. Try again. How do these products impact the estrus cycle? So PG600 works directly at the ovary, and it's very similar to FSH and LH, showing with the red line and the blue line on the graph here. This product grows follicles on the ovary, prepares them for ovulation. Altrinagest is the next product we'll talk a little bit about. It's a progesterone based product or a synthetic progesterone, and it acts to hold the brain back and to extend the cycle, very similar to what progesterone would do in the estrus cycle. Avigel causes release of LH, resulting in control of ovulation, so we can control the time of ovulation and therefore facilitate a single fixed time insemination. So those are the products we'll cover today. So let's start with PG600. So what happens when PG600 is injected? PG600 is a combination of pregnant mare serum and human chorionic gonadotropin, similar to FSH and HCG respectively. And these hormones, as we talked about, work to grow the follicle on the ovary. And so they grow and mature these follicles. So this product has direct action on the ovary, does not work through the brain. So its direct action is to grow those follicles and prepare them for ovulation with the intent of inducing a fertile estrus in prepubertal and anestrus sows. So the key point here is that it works on truly prepubertal gilts and anestrus sows. It does not work on cyclic sows, as we'll see here in a moment. So if you look at why does PG600 not work, it's likely been given to cyclic sows and gilts. So that would give us reason to review bore exposure and our heat check programs. Are we really effective with those, and are our people executing those protocols appropriately? It could also be that these sows have cycled in the farrowing crates due to low numbers of pigs or poor lactation performance and management. I am also of the opinion that severely catabolic gilts and sows do not respond well to PG600 as well. So those are some things that can cause some real problems for the product. One of the other issues that I have seen in the past are injection problems, where people try to increase the dose or they try to superovulate these sows a little bit. And the other one is missed injections or partial injections, and then they will give a second injection because they missed the first one, which is typical with vaccinations and things like that. So with hormones, we do not want to do that. So increasing the dose of PG600 and redosing partial injections will likely cause cysts, which will cause failure of the product as well. Rob Knox at the University of Illinois has done a lot of good work in that area to help us out to understand that. So the key points here are that PG600 does not work on cycling gilts and sows, with the exception of females that are probably day 15 plus of the estrus cycle. It should work on those. So 2/3 of them, if it's split up in three equal groups, 2/3 of them it will definitely not work in. If PG600 does work, what does that tell us? If PG600 works in your gilts, it indicates that those gilts were truly prepubertal, and that's a good thing. So particularly if they're 150 to 165 days or that 5.5-month-old gilt, the product's working as expected. It should do that. If you give it to gilts that are greater than 210 days in kind of a salvage breeding operation, it should work well there too. And if it works, that's great, but do you really want it to be working there? Is the question we need to ask ourselves. So are you okay with the number of animals that you injected, and are you okay with the response that you're getting from the product? So if you consider a high response rate of 70 to 100%, which would be pretty much a label response, your gilts were prepubertal when they were injected. It also indicates that your heat check program is going along pretty well, because you found the gilts that were in heat and the ones that are not in heat were injected. However, you may want to review your bore exposure program to increase the number of, or to reduce the number of gilts that are injected. There may be some problems there to address. You may also want to review diets, feeding, stonking densities, vaccination protocols, and other stressors that might reduce the number of gilts that are actually responding to your bore exposure program. So some things to keep in mind there. If you have a low response to PG600 in gilts, less than 70%, it means that those animals were probably cycling at the time of injection, or that they truly could not cycle. So you would want to review, in those cases, your heat check protocol to make sure that that's being executed properly, make sure you got good bores, things like that, to find gilts in heat. You would also want to check your culling criteria to make sure that animals are being culled appropriately and timely, that we're not injecting animals that should be on the cull truck, and also assess body condition. Are these animals truly capable of being reproductively functional animals? So if PG600 works on your sows, so it's labeled for anestrus sows to be injected at weaning. So if it works on those sows, and a lot of batch farms do this, they'll inject sows at weaning, particularly P1s and P2s. If it's working well there, that's great. That's as expected. And it indicates also that your heat detection program is working really well too. If you inject day 10 plus post weaning or your late wean sows and it's working well there, that's great, but there's some things I think we need to consider if it's working well for you. And one of those is that these sows are likely in some state of catabolism, in which case that's they're not cycling because they just physically can't do that yet. So they need more feed, and we need to be reviewing body condition of these sows and gilts going into the farrowing crates to make sure that we're not putting fat sows in and fat gilts that inhibits feed intake during lactation. So the big deal here is lactation feed intake will increase the number of sows that come into heat and reduce the number of sows that you're going to have to inject with PG600 later. So review treatment in lactation and just lactation management overall to improve your lactation feed intake. Also, if PG600 works well in your sows, it shows that your boar exposure and heat check programs are effective there too. So that's the good side of it. We'll switch gears a little bit and talk about Altrinagest. I'll use the term Matrix, Swine Mate, and Chronomate are the 3 products sold in the U.S. that are covered under Altrinagest. All 3 of these products have the same formula and concentration. Read their label instructions. They've got a lot of good information on there that can help you with execution and the use of these products. Altrinagest is used for the synchronization of estrus in sexually mature gilts that have had at least 1 estrus cycle. It results in estrus or standing heat in 4 to 9 days after removal or after removal of treatment in these gilts. So, for example, if you have 100 mature gilts and they're fed Altrinagest and they got random unknown cycles, if 80 of these were cyclic, when we started with Altrinagest, only those 80 are going to come in heat 4 to 9 days later. Those other 20 are not going to come into heat. They may, but likely not. So the best option here is something to consider, and Jenny talked about this a fair amount in her talk, is you need a really good, robust H&S program to couple up with the use of Altrinagest. So if you include only cyclic gilts into an Altrinagest synchronization program, you can expect up to 100% of those gilts to cycle in that 4 to 9 day window. So using an H&S program along with this is very effective use of the product. So what happens when Altrinagest is fed to gilts or sows? Altrinagest takes over where progesterone stops on days 15 and 16. So in this, whoops, I did it again. So in this cartoon of the hormones of the estrous cycle, progesterone is here. Prostaglandin is released on days 12 to 13 from the uterus. It takes out the progesterone production from the CL on the ovary. When we start feeding Altrinagest at days 12 through 15, it now takes over where progesterone leaves off and continues to hold the animal from cycling until it's removed. Then LH and FSH again pick up and create the next cycle. So the key points here are is that Altrinagest will always extend your cycle, always, 100% of the time. Altrinagest will not shorten the cycle, and it will not induce a cycle. So feeding Altrinagest to non-cycling gilts isn't going to make them come into heat. That's one item I see fair amount in the industry or a thought out there. Anyway, so complicated slide, but I'll try to simplify it quickly. This is an Altrinagest model to look at the synchronization of gilts in a batch situation where we would want to breed those gilts in a 5 to 7 day window. So the first line here is this line is just 1,000-day date all across here. This is the first cycle date, and it really coincides with the date above it. So this is when gilts would have a first heat. This is when they'd have a second heat. This is when they'd have a third cycle, okay? So if we want to breed these gilts in this 7-day window here, gilts that come into heat beginning on day 393 are going to be bred in a third cycle over here beginning on 381 to 387, which is the cycle date here, our intended breed date. So to simplify this, we're going to breed 7 days worth of third cycle gilts, we're going to breed 7 days worth of second cycle gilts, and we're going to breed 14 days worth of Altrinagest synchronized gilts, so that all 28 days of these gilts are now bred in a 7-day window for your batch synchronization. So these gilts, as they come through, we would put them on matrix beginning on days 12 to 15 of the cycle and feed it for until last matrix, and then they would, so all these gilts would then cycle in a 7-day window. So works very well in a plan where all your gilts have been run through a good H&S program. If you're just taking random cyclic gilts, in this case, you would start all these, a random group of gilts on day 360 or 361, feed them for 14 days, and breed what comes into heat in that 5 to 7 day window. And again, I can make this available if you send me an email as well. So, some Altrinagest applications and some problems I've run across over working with people on the sow farms. The female must get its full dose. That's the first critical point. Make sure sows aren't robbing from neighbors. Make sure you don't have bubbles in the syringes. Make sure your syringes work adequately. Those types of things. Make sure they get their full dose. If you're giving it in the mouth, if they drool it out, reapply it. Application must be done, I think, within plus or minus 15 minutes of the same time each day. Start with the same sow, get a good routine. The other thing is, don't mess with these sows or gilts while you're feeding it. Don't vaccinate them, don't change the feed levels, don't bore expose them. There's no need for that. Make that time as stress-free as possible. So, and also it helps to train to use corn oil or apple juice 5 to 7 days before you might begin application. Key points: make sure each animal gets its dose. Timing of application is essential, and don't stress them during the treatment period. Altrenagest and PG600 can work very well together. An example of this would be to put all your gilts on matrix for 14 days, both cyclic and non-cyclic. You need to have a good H&S program going so you know who is cyclic and who isn't. And those gilts that with an H&S will come into heat on days 4 through 9. Those that were not cyclic, 24 hours after the last Altrenagest feed, give them an injection of PG600, and they will come in at the same time, approximately 4 to 7 days after the injection. This protocol works very well to bring cyclic and non-cyclic gilts together to be bred in a designated breed window. This table looks a little bit at the current use of PG600 and Altrenagest and give you an idea a little bit about how it can be used in production. If you're looking to synchronize cycling gilts and cycling late wean sows or skipped late wean sows, Altrenagest is a great product. It's used, idea is used mostly on batch farms and on startups and repops. If you're looking to balance breed groups, so you got a lot of gilts that come in and heat all at one time and you need more in another breed group, Altrenagest can work well to extend those cycles to move those gilts into desired breed groups and kind of balance out breeding to help parity structure and culling decisions. Again, used extensively on batch farms. It's used on startups to level out breed groups there also. PG600 is used a lot with salvage breeding. I see that almost exclusive use of it on older gilts and late wean sows, and that's used on in most applications. The combination of Altrenagest and PG600 is used on batch farms quite a bit to bring those non-cyclic gilts, older gilts and late wean sows into that breed group to fill those groups out. And last, PG600 is a very effective product to be used with young gilts. However, it's rarely used that way in the industry today. Switch to fixed time insemination. Avigel is a GnRH agonist that's, when administered intravaginally, causes the release of LH and causes ovulation to occur 40 to 48 hours later to facilitate single fixed time insemination approximately 24 hours after application. The protocol is published and looks like this. In a group of weaned sows, we would start boar exposure on days, Thanks, Mark. Sorry. So after sows are weaned, we would begin boar exposure and heat check on day 0 or 1. Sows that come into heat on days 0 through 2, we would breed them with a common sow farm protocol and give them multiple inseminations. Sows that on day 3, we would begin heat check in the morning, and those sows that have early signs of heat or proestrus signs, and those sows that are in heat, we would administer Avigel to them at that time, and then we would breed those sows 24 hours later. We would repeat that same protocol for sows that for heat check protocol on day 4 and 5. And so we would find those sows in heat that are proestrus and are in heat, administer Avigel, breed them the next day. Sows that come into heat on day 6, we are going to breed them with normal farm protocol and 6+ and breed them with multiple inseminations. Protocol works well to facilitate single fixed time insemination in using this protocol. So we'll close with the boar. As Jenny mentioned earlier in her talk, she has a really good slide in there. Remember the slide with the boar, with all the pheromone being produced? Go back and review that slide. She did an excellent job of describing that process. That's what we're looking for. And the boar is still the most effective tool that we have on the farm. If you're using your boars right, your boar exposure program and your heat check programs correctly, it'll greatly facilitate the use of these products that we've just talked about here as well. So use the best boars, use an adequate number of boars, use active working boars that work females effectively. We found that using Meishan boars in gangs or teams really is the most effective use and really provides employees a great way of being able to execute your boar exposure and heat check programs. So thanks a lot for your kind attention today. Thanks to those who have participated in bringing these products to market. They're great products and can help manage our farms more efficiently. Also like to extend a special thanks to those in swine extension at our various universities. They've provided a plethora of information that really helps us understand how these products can be used effectively and for profitability. Also like to thank the DNA genetics team who helped me put this together and allowed me the time to do this today. So hopefully this helped you understand things a bit more and you can be more efficient with the use of these products in your own production system. So if you got any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer, or try to anyway, try to answer them.
Any questions?
Bob?
So a question, Steve, and I don't mean to put you on the spot with this,
Nope.
but as we get more and more farms using gangs of boars, heat checking, that sort of thing, in your opinion, what do we have to look at for a timeline before we're concerned about sows, maybe going, so we're running these gangs of boars, we're heat checking, and then we're following up with a PCAI. What's our timeline we got to look at before we're worried about maybe whether some of these sows have become refractory and that we missed them? You know what I'm saying?
The data would tell us that's probably on sows is probably 40, 45 minutes and they start to become refractory. So gilts might be a little bit quicker.
It's a huge labor savings.
Yes. So to Jenny's point earlier, we need a good boar replacement plan too, and that's sadly lacking in our industry today. So thanks, Jenny, for bringing that out and reminding me to bring it out here again. So please.
So when you heat check, do you guys do pens or a lot of crates? And then with the pens, would you be better off on a single boar in the pen and then running boars on the outside of the pens on the other side for a better benefit?
For gilts or for sows?
For both.
For both, okay. For gilts, I prefer to run at least one boar in a pen. And again, we need to make sure if your pens have 30 gilts in, it's one gilt for 12 to 15 gilts. So if you got pens where you got 30 gilts in them, you need to be running at least 2 boars in that pen. And the same really applies to sows too.
So the second part, have like boars run in the alleyway, like the feed alleyway on one side, and then run the boar in the pens. Have one single boar in the pen as you're going, but plus multiple in the alleyway. Would that be a benefit or just kind of a waste?
Fence line boar exposure is not a waste of time. it's just not a very effective use of time. The data would clearly show that bores in pens at a ratio of 1 to 10 to 15 is the optimum use of bores for bore exposure, both of sows and gilts. Anything less than that, and you can start to expect less result. So again, it's what you're willing to accept and what you want to accomplish. So in a fence line situation, the more bores you have, the better you are. And rarely do we have a pen situation where every gilt has nose access to the bore in the alleyway. I've never seen that, to be honest with you. So that's the challenge you have.
Where he's thinking about bringing both, one in the pen and the fence line. The only thought gets back to there again, the quality of the bore. How much he's frothing, how engaged he is. And so the only thought I've got is if those gang bores get each other worked up, they could be adding some stimulus. But if we got a good bore in the pen, that's still the best. That's hard to beat.
Okay, so there's two things to keep in mind here. One is, and I should have asked the question earlier, so forgive me. There's bore exposure and there's heat check. Okay, bore exposure is typically for prepubertal gilts and wean sows. Okay, prepubertal gilts need direct bore contact. Read Jenny's slides. She did a great presentation on that. You need sight of the bore, you need sound of the bore, you need smell of the bore, and you need physical contact. Those are the things gilts need. With wean sows, most of those are in crates, so gangs of bores work really well there for a good 30-minute period of time, and as long as you can give them from day 0 to when you start heat checking them. That's where those bores mounting, and they can really do a great job of stimulation there. That is effective in inducing heat in wean sows to get normal weaned estrus profiles, and that would be sows that come into heat on days 3 through 5. Sows that come into heat after that are abnormal, and bores can help you get that done.
Let's give Dr. Turlow another round of applause. Thank you, Steve.
Welcome.